Right, now we are probably live. This looks promising. This looks incredibly promising. Hello, people. After merely 10 minutes of yay, we are live. Amazing. Now we are probably live. Okay, now the echo. This is only slightly. Incredibly promising. Only hello, slightly. People. After how do we stop How do we stop the echo? 10 minutes. This is incredibly professional. Yay! Yay, we are live. I'm glad we can hear this all over again. Okay, now the echo is only slightly.
It's authentic.
Okay, I don't even know what to do. This is incredible. What a wonderful start to our live stream. Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is a pleasure to have you all around the world for our fireside chat with the wonderful Cyrus Yari. My camera is up here, so I'm going to be looking right at it. Cyrus is in Berlin. I am here in Mexico City, and we are just very, very lucky to have Cyrus with us at Codesmith's Fireside Chats, a brilliant alum who has done so much already for the learning community at Codesmith, mentored many other alumni, has become a senior software engineer at Tesla, has a fascinating journey and story themselves. We're going to dive into both Cyrus's journey and story. Also, I'm going to have to unmute. So at some point, we better hope that the echo is gone, or at least the recording of my the things I said 5 seconds earlier is gone, so I can hear Cyrus's responses. Otherwise, that will be very difficult. But Cyrus has not only been is not only a senior software engineer at Tesla, but also been a founder of Rational VC, a VC and publishing fund, which I find particularly fascinating. They've switched from focusing on interviews and profiles themselves that have been very, very interesting into capturing eternal ideas from the Lindy book series. We're going to learn about what that means from Cyrus, because it really is a powerful take that is very established in reason, the reasoning being ideas that transcend and last is a good indicator of resilience and insight of those ideas. They're not fragile. They're ideas that through different eras and contexts, nevertheless maintain their power. So I'm really looking forward to learning about that, joining that up with Cyrus's work at Tesla, Cyrus's journey through Codesmith, and then looking hopefully quite a little bit at what does this mean for society, for software engineering specifically, and for technology in the years ahead. So, Cyrus, welcome. Let me see if I can hear you.
Yeah, test.
Okay, so then looking. Okay, so sorry, quite a little bit at what does this mean? We'll have to wait for me to finish. Society, how do I software engineering specifically, and for technology in the years ahead. So. Cyrus, if you like your own voice, then you'll love this. Let me see if I can hear you. Okay, perfect. I've now stopped it. Cyrus, lovely to have you. Please go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. It's been a couple of years since I've been on camera at Codesmith, but pleasure to be back. It's always got a dear place in my heart, and it's always great to be with the Will Sentance. So
the being a dangerous, yes, exactly. Excellent. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, not at all. Yeah, pleasure to be here. We're going to discuss a whole bunch of topics, I guess, topics that I've been thinking about, writing about. We've been discussing behind the scenes. A lot of people are kind of, AI is the new buzz. Also, the current state of the market, the future of tech, all of these topics. But yeah, I don't know how you want to kick this off. I could talk all day. I don't want to. I could give a quick introduction if that works, or do you want to? Should we just get straight into the topics?
Absolutely. Well, why don't we start with a little bit, rather than necessarily start with our journeys, perhaps start a little bit with the latest feelings you've had, and we can then work back from that into sort of the journey that led you to this. But I think maybe start with, Codesmith talks a lot about the notion of a modern software engineer. So this is, in our take, something's evolving, something's moving from software engineer being maybe this more focused, even instrumentalist, maybe notion into something that is more central to society. You see that in the kind of work you do, Cyrus, at Tesla. You see in the kind of organizations that dominate society, and you see it in the way in which organizations that necessarily don't center software increasingly do. So I guess I'd be curious to kind of start, and then maybe from that you get a sense of your own journey to it and what led you on this path. Your studies, like mine, weren't in computer science, weren't in software engineering. What led you on that path with this kind of centered idea of what is this software engineer that we're talking about at this point?
Yes. So I talk a lot, so feel free to stop me at any point. That's why I have a podcast, because I love the sound of my own voice.
Sometimes 3 hours long, which is a good measure.
The latest podcast was a 4-hour long. It's a conversational audiobook. It's a timeless. The idea is hopefully my grandchildren will be able to listen to it, and the ideas are evergreen. They
that is actually
stand
wonderful.
the test of time. So.
That's actually wonderful.
But yeah, talking about software engineering for now, that is, I think of why did I even get into code to begin with? So I'll get to the software engineering now very quickly, but a few years ago, I was in investment banking after I left college, and my story is no private school or anything like that. You can check my LinkedIn or my personal website for more of my personal childhood story. But fast forward, I went to investment banking after university, and it's a place where your brain turns to cabbage, is what I always say, because you're basically working 100 hours a week to do Excel, PowerPoint, and it's all status signaling, and it's basically Hollywood. It's all perception. So it's not a place where, if you have a curious mind, it nourishes your mind. And it's not a place long-term where you can live a happy and peaceful life, because end of the day, that for me is important. So I left, I did a whole bunch of things in tech, which were all non-technical. So things like business development or product management in startups. I had a swing at some of my own startups, not venture-backed, but sort of bootstrapped, kind of like you want to call it. They call it indie hacking now, the cool kids, but it's just bootstrapping your own little company, software and non-software. And a bunch of projects failed. 2 of them did okay, but it was nothing beyond like a salary or something. And then I said, okay, I have a few months to like take a deep breath and explore for the first time, because since childhood, I was always in like survival mode. So I started reading and listening to anything and everything I could, because as I said, the reason I left banking was because I would like to think I have a curious mind, but because I come from an environment where there was none of this knowledge available. So the internet is my best friend. I call it a positive black swan, which is, a black swan is an event that you cannot predict. It's an unpredictable event. And a positive black swan is, in the 13 billion years of Earth, 13.8 billion years of Earth, we happen to just be here when the internet has come about. So, and I can access information, networks, people, all sorts of things unimaginable to like anyone from any of my ancestors, really. So it's a huge blessing. And then I leverage the internet to just learn a lot. So one of the ideas which comes from Naval Ravikant, who very big Silicon Valley sort of software engineer, angel investor, tech guy, who he's been on Joe Rogan. He has a very good interview, which is very timeless. But Naval actually gets a lot of his ideas from Nassim Taleb, who's, I would like to consider myself a student of Taleb. Nassim Taleb and Charlie Munger have shaped a lot of my views, sort of their philosophies, teachings, not just with work, but how to live a good life. And what Naval took from Taleb and kind of added his own tech twist to it is the idea of leverage. And leverage is, there are 4 sort of leverage multipliers you can think of. There's code, there's media, there's capital, and there's labor. Code is essentially, why is code a leverage multiplier? Because if you code something, it's not like, let's say you turn up to a 9 to 5, or let's say you own a corner store or you own a restaurant. You have to physically be there. Your input equals output in terms of it's linear. And code is non-linear in the sense that if code does well, then it doesn't, you code it once and then it can earn for you online, whether you're sleeping and, you have a few customers. It could be, I don't know, you're selling an $8 SaaS subscription. Doesn't have to be something crazy, but you're then earning money while you're sleeping. So That's
But
leverage.
It's also fungible and composable, kind of fancy words to say it can be reused by other people at potentially no marginal cost. I mean, that's the kind of notion of open source as well. But even put that aside, like I often talk about, you can't use the concrete pour tool to do the steel rebar installation in infrastructure, and you may not even be able to use the same engineer. But within software, or as you say, code, you can. A lot of the time, you literally could. Which is kind of extraordinary.
Yeah, exactly that. So I realized code not only for the leverage points, but also for the importance of you need to know code, because I can't remember if it was Mark Andreessen or Naval Ravikant, one of these guys in tech who's like built software before, basically said, if you don't tell the software what to do, eventually the software will tell you what to do. And so I was like, oh, okay, fire on my ass. I better do something about this. And so, yeah, code is important. And then the media is also similar. Media is podcasting or writing a blog online or having a voice, which I think in this attention economy is a non-negotiable. It's not whether you like to do it or not. I think it's a case of you have no option. So media is also important. You put a podcast out, people are listening to it while you're sleeping. That's also leverage. You don't have to physically be there. Like we're live streaming now, sure, but the final version of this is going to go uploaded on YouTube. People can listen to it and we don't have to be there. So that's another form of leverage.
Yeah, what I'll be curious about is the why behind this, because I think everything you describe is absolutely on point. Mm-hmm. I guess the question becomes, I'm trying to see you on this screen. This is not my computer, and this. Jesus,
you're not missing out on much. Don't worry.
I would just love to be able to see your. I guess the question becomes the why.
Sure.
Because that's these are, I think, necessary for, as you say, leverage, and therefore maybe components of quite what one might call the good life, so to speak. Mm-hmm. They may not be sufficient. And so I'd be really curious about your why. What was your purpose behind starting to establish this sort of leverage? Sure. You didn't, you kind of brushed over something that I think is actually kind of profound. Mm-hmm. You share, and again, it's often easier for other people to speak to these things than maybe yourself, because I think you are a modest person, but your journey is kind of extraordinary, right? Like you moved from Iran at 5 years old as literally a refugee, as you describe in your writings, going through some of the toughest schools in the UK. Back before, when I went to college and in my university, over half of the people coming in were from private schools. It's something that led me in a way to move to America, as I wanted to be away from that kind of structure, not per se for any judgment of those people at all, not at all, but rather just for my own sense of I needed to find somewhere where I could define my path without some of those structures. I'd be curious. And then you went to, fancy schools and achieved investment banking. I mean, I did consulting as well, but I didn't, I looked up to investment banking when I was graduating. That was the thing that was where the special, things could be done, maybe. I mean, it's a financial crisis, so I didn't really think that perhaps, but that was that next step. So you've then developed this idea, or you've established for yourself, taken from some of these visionary people and established your take on it, the idea of leverage. I guess I'd be very curious, and I'm sure it must relate to some of that journey, your why for wanting to establish that leverage.
Sure. Yeah, so a bunch of reasons, namely the notion of optionality, which Nassim Taleb talks about, but it's pretty simple. It's a case of, okay, in the future, it's going to be a lot of automation. You need to just generally be tech proficient. And I also like to build startups. I like to always, even if I'm working in a 9-to-5, I like to hack away on projects, whether it's podcasting, it's indie hacking, it's whatever. I like to be doing something in the evenings, because I think the future of the long-term future, I mean, I'm talking like 10, 20 plus years, of long-term employment is pretty dire. There was actually a tweet recently by, I don't know if I can, maybe I'm not in the chat.
We're going to come back to these points.
Sure.
I come in prepared to challenge you on your more apocalyptic projection.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's going to be a lot of automation generally. You need to be tech proficient. It gives you optionality. So optionality to build startups on the side, to get a job in tech. And jobs in tech, I think, as a software engineer, it's one of the easier jobs of society. Like, who are we kidding? We're not working in a coal mine. We're not doing any physical manual labor. And it's not also, okay, there's other office jobs, but I've had other office jobs like finance where your brain turns to cabbage. You're just doing Excel, PowerPoint, and email all day, every day. Nonsense meetings. So software engineering is direct feedback, and it feels like a puzzle, really. It's rewarding, it's satisfying. You get immediate feedback for what you're building. And since I was a kid, since I was like, I don't know, 11, 12, whatever, or 13, it was a no-code tool called Freewebs back in the day. And I would just make websites for no reason whatsoever. I didn't come from an environment of go read these coding books or go do this. I was just like, oh, cool, this computer, first time I'm touching a computer properly. So I was like, Freewebs, make a website. And then I would just print out tiny little things of the freewebs dot something, whatever domain, and hand it out to people in the playground. And they're like, what's this? It's like personal website with photos of me and my friends for no reason whatsoever. So I think it's like my brain is always in one foot in like building and then one foot in marketing, but I never really got the building down. And I spent most of my teens and 20s in like sales oriented or business oriented roles. So I kind of wanted to go back to that builder that I had within me. And as I said, if you don't tell, like eventually the software is going to tell you what to do. So I was like, I better get this down. It gives me optionality. I like to build. And the last thing I'll say on this point, Naval Ravikant himself says, learn to build, learn to sell. If you can do both, you become unstoppable. So that's a quote.
I think what's funny is, again, I would say that, it's brilliantly put, but it become unstoppable for what? But before I think the answer is actually, well, it's so funny the way you put that story of being a child. It reminds me of similarly, and something that I do think we talk about losing as we get older. And I wonder if we don't lose it, it moves into being something else, which is, I'm going to, the word is imagination.
Yes.
When you describe yourself as a teenager, I wouldn't have even expected it. I've never really joined it up to that. When you describe yourself as a teenager going around with, here's my site I've done because, well, it's fun, it's curiosity, it's imagination, it's expression. I think we too, as we get older, we do. I watch my nephew. Everything's an invented story. Oh, the dinosaur! the dinosaur bit me today, and yes. Olive, his adorable friend, I had to carry her away from the dinosaur, and it's like, it's almost like building is an adult expression, and maybe building and then sharing, as you say, the ability to build and then tell the story is an adult expression of imagination. And that's kind of wonderful. You talk about indie hackers. I think the best hackers perhaps is that you talk about words like autonomy, the ability to express yourself. Those are all essentially stretching your imagination. But as an adult, you can make it real. So I'd never really joined the dots up on that. But there's some sense in which that 14-year-old version of you has a big imagination. Hey, look what I've done. And then the desire to share it. So I think that's brilliant.
I feel like there's a lot of things humans think. A lot of humans think they know everything, but there's a lot of Mother Nature that kind of takes care of things that doesn't, we cannot make sense of. That I can still hear you. We still have you. Yeah, we've got you back. Yeah, there are a lot of things.
I'm sorry, my internet is a night. Am I back?
I've still got you. Yeah.
Oh, woohoo! Say that last bit again. Sorry.
I was just saying there's a lot of things that are just down to, I guess, Mother Nature that we cannot explain, and part of that is, like our innate desire to want to do things. So a lot of things just cannot be explained. And what I was getting at earlier when I said like the long-term future of corporates is kind of dire, I meant that one needs to know how to like build or code, and one also, but those who can only code and not have any soft skills, I think that may be pretty dire in the long-term future. I mean, there's a lot of talk about that already, and I think coding, a lot of people that I've had the pleasure to code with at Codesmith are the type of people who come from, let's say, other industries. For example, teachers, accountants, photographers, all walks of life. And that's what I love about Codesmith. And they have phenomenal coders because of the high bar of entry. And so they come into Codesmith, they have the like neurons or whatever you want to call it, because they've passed this high bar to get in. But then because they come from other walks of life, they haven't been coding since they were 12. And so I'm known for, people say I have very controversial opinions, but I just like to keep it authentic. Pretty much everyone I've coded with or worked with who's coded since their teens is just a miserable person to work with. And my personal experience, and the people who at Codesmith I had the pleasure of coding with.
Can I get on record that we support all types of builders, engineers?
Codesmith supports all types. That's just my personal opinion, asterisks. But yeah, look, Codesmith will bring all sorts of experience, and that's the way the future is going. You need to be somewhat of a generalist. You need to, people, let's say someone's a teacher, they come to Codesmith. Well, they've been public speaking, they have empathy, they have all these characteristics where it's not just I've sat at a keyboard. And because the people I'm telling from my experience, I'm not talking anything to do with Codesmith, but in the corporate world, these people who've been coding since they were kids, they can just code. They can not really put together a good sentence, whether it's in writing, it's in speaking. And with more and more automation in the long term, I think Peter Thiel himself, the founder of PayPal and like a Silicon Valley OG, Peter Thiel has said, in the future, it's not going to be math skills that will, be the reason you win. It'll be verbal skills. It'll be soft skills. So you got to marry the two. You got to marry your, let's say.
Well, can I pitch then? It is.
Please.
You use a key word there, marry. It's the intersection. To me, it is actually the beauty is. So that's why I would kind of, albeit tongue in cheek, push back on the idea of it's not so much that being the coder since 12 is in any way a problem, so much as if that is done in a way that is exclusionary of the intersection. The intersection is where, to me, and that's why I ain't very good at coding, but I wanted to understand. I wanted to go under the hood of this domain that was a core tool by which things could be done. And I was on a call with the co-creator of React, Tom Aquino, about a week ago, and they were saying their dream is that the lawyer out there, and we've had alums who are lawyers, many obviously, who then go on to become software engineers, that they can actually, the dream is they can build answers to the questions of law in that more leveraged way.
Yes.
With the genuine insight of having been a lawyer and the genuine insight of having been a builder with code. And that to me is the powers. And so I think what I think is interesting right now, and I'd be really curious to dig into a bit of your experience at Tesla on this, is are we entering a period where that intersection is becoming all the more important? Are we entering a period where, and I give the example of the lawyer because one of the grads recently took a role as a software engineer, legal prompter, a fusion lawyer, software engineer. One, I just saw another offer come into yesterday for an AI prompt engineer. Again, this was within a healthcare role where they are a former medic. This fusion again is the is this going to be the nature of these roles? And I'd be really curious if you're seeing that emerge. Have you seen that start to emerge in your work at Tesla as well?
100%, yeah. So thanks for the correction, because it is the marrying of the two, or the intersection, that's important. So in Tesla itself, where we have young people who are, let's say, interns or just come out of university and they're early in their careers, and I mentor people kind of, whether it's in the company or outside the company, on a ad hoc pro bono kind of basis, especially minorities and immigrants. But when I mentor these people, if they've been coding since a young age, I tell them, look, the best thing you could do in your free time, go to something like Toastmasters, which is public speaking. I did that when I was in banking. I'd go some evenings. You just turn up. It's free. It's just Google Toastmasters, and you can practice your public speaking. If they're an intern, I'm like, look, the next time you get some time off university, just go get a sales job for like 3 months. So those are the young people. If you're a bit older, like us, and you've been more on the technical side or in a job that's not had much human interaction, or which is basically writing or speaking, it's the soft skills, right? I tell them, all right, well, you can, in your workplace, you can nominate yourself, you can do things, be proactive, like tell your manager, okay, can I run these meetings? Can I run the stand-ups we do every day? Or can I run? So you're being more proactive, and really after a few reps, you just get better, you get comfortable. It's like running into the fire of, it's a bit cliche to say, but the growth mindset of the growth is on the other side of the discomfort, which, God, it sounds so trite, but it's the truth.
It is wildly true. Like it's tried as, and to be honest, as a side note, that is the entire premise of Codesmith is the fire, the struggle.
Yes.
The struggle is difficult, embrace and all that sort of stuff. But what I would just pitch is the bit you said there that's most important is you were sharing it with them and you were going to show up for them as they went through that struggle. And you've described to me a few times sort of privately some of the people you've taken from beginning to end, particularly as you say, from immigrant backgrounds in the UK and elsewhere. And it is the transformation through struggle. The key piece being, though, you must have somebody providing the commitment to you for that. Otherwise, it is trite, but it ain't trite if somebody is there saying you can. So I want to come back to that. Like, I really want to hear, why do you say that to people? Like, what gives maybe come back to it, but like, where's your desire to tell people you can come from?
Yeah, I mean, another positive black swan that happened to my life. I mean, I talk bad about my days in investment banking now, but the very good thing it did for me, which I'm very grateful for, it opened me up to an environment of, it's these, let's say, class of people that I'd always put on a pedestal. And you get in there and you just, after a few months, you're like, is this it? Like, these people, there's nothing special about these people. There's nothing, whatever. And then I started venturing into, okay, like, it's not to say they're bad people. Well, I think some bankers are, because they get bailed out by taxpayers and they have no skin in the game. But generally speaking, the people lovely people, but so is everyone else. So are the people at Codesmith, so are the people walking down the street. Like, most people have a good heart, they have good intentions, they just want to kind of do what makes them happy, whether it's take care of their family or go on a walk or play with the dog. So it was just like, okay, if my eyes have been opened up in banking that anyone could do pretty much anything, these people are not more special than me, I'm not more special than them, it equals the playing field. So it was like, okay, I'm going to go in the evenings, I'm going to go to Toastmasters. The weekends, I'm going to, I don't know, read these books. In the whatever free time I had, of course, I had fun too. But in some of my free time, I used it to kind of upskill. And then that goes a long way. But also as a means of necessity, another positive black swan was in my teens and early 20s while studying, I always worked in sales jobs, like very aggressive cold calling sales jobs in London, where like almost every week, like a lot of people just get the cuts because you got to hit a certain number of sales on the phone, cold calling people and trying to like close sales. So I think that helps a lot. That's why I always tell young people, the technical skills, if you're eager, they'll come to you. Definitely work on those, but marry it with the soft skills. And if you're older, then you can take writing courses online. You can go to Toastmasters to improve your speaking. So there's a lot of things, but yeah, it's exactly as you say, it's the marrying, and it's also my eyes opened up that anyone could do this. It's again, another trite kind of idea, but
there's a bit of a kind of righteousness about, therefore, giving people that conviction as well.
Yes.
Just to add my take on that, like, I have a slightly different version, which is of me and my 4 younger sisters. All of us, on paper, have done things that, look kind of good on a LinkedIn kind of thing. And yet I know, well, I don't think any of us, maybe my sisters, I don't know, but certainly I didn't feel any greater aptitude, not least I'm going through the numbers of Codesmith, the finances, like a few days ago, and I watch how when I share it with, for example, the accountants or whatever, they just like get it. Like I have to sit there for hours piecing through step by step by step. They just get it instantly. And so I know, and when I went to a coding school myself, alongside people who, on paper you put one's background and yet everybody, I still remember my first time pair programming, when the person next to me goes, we were set up to pair program, and I said, hey, do you mind if I go and study up on this thing for the next, I don't know how long. And after about 10, 15 minutes, they said, hey, do you mind if I get started? Do you mind if I get started? I was like, all I wanted to do was prep and understand and learn. I was no more, this person, was ready to, the mindset mattered more. The thing is, those mindsets and the ones I got instilled with was hard work pays off. Now that sounds like the most, old school mentality, but the thing is I had, and me and my sister were so lucky for this, two, parents, obviously, typically this is often teachers, who instilled in me the whole time. And instilled means they said, keep going, keep going, keep going. And in doing so, you bet things start to pay off.
Absolutely.
The thing about that is it made me appreciate there was nothing special besides the creation of a flywheel. And for me, the joy of Codesmith is to try to create that same flywheel in somebody experiencing and living. Keep going, keep going, keep going. It will pay off. Keep going, it will pay off. And everybody has the right to that. To me, everybody has the right to that, because that is not tied. It ain't really tied to innate ability. It's a wonderfully manageable, controllable thing. And that's my thesis of change with Codesmith to some extent, is if you then do that for people who then, when they are in positions of authority, remember that same mental experience, they then can't help but want to somewhat design the institutions in which they have power to also allow hard work to pay off and ensure that proportionate to the hard work required, there is the support. In other words, if you've got a lot of hard work needed because you ain't had it teed up at all, but the support is equal to that. And that to me is, but that takes a lot of, and this is not the, classic kind of founder type in their whatever 50s, 60s looking back and go, it was all hard work. And it's like, I worked hard and everyone else. Not at all. It's not that at all. Instead, it's the notion that hard work was not born from them. It was born from the person telling them it pays off. And that's why I just, I admire the sitting alongside people as they do the hard work and telling them it. There was a team member who was described to me having and I've shared this story before, but like having a illness as a child, I think diabetes actually, and then they had, you said it didn't, made me stronger. And then they were like, because their mum told me every time, you're going to get through this, it's going to make you stronger kind of thing. In other words, there was somebody providing their emotional capital, their emotional
that's very important.
To instill in the person, it's going to pay off. Otherwise, it's just devastating struggle. And to me, that's the thing. And that's the bit that I think is underappreciated, is the extent to which it's that dedication. And as we move into this AI era, you witness this more and more as you realize any task that gets replicated by an automation, let's call it, GPT or an LLM, any task that gets automated by one of those tools, it loses, if a human does it via that tool, it loses much of its power, of its power of persuasion. You write an email generated automatically, its value goes because it's the essential value of the person's dedication that we as other people value so much. And so that brings me to, you talk about these soft skills. Well, why are they so compelling? I think in part because they're really damn hard and emotionally draining. And I think people know that and therefore attribute to it a sense of, wow, okay, thank you. You're putting the time and effort into me. And when you, as you say, you speak, we all know the reason Toastmasters is so, and I've not seen it being for myself, but the reason all writing online is they're really damn draining. And so when people do it, people go, especially if you're doing it for someone, to explain something that's hard to understand, to get their buy-in. And that's where corporates, I haven't worked in, large corporates except for my 11 months in a medium-sized consulting firm, but they are places where, you're constantly relying on human energy to push things forward a little bit.
Exactly.
And that can be very unsatisfying because there's a lot of emotional energy to not move very far. But it is all about that value, I think, to effort, care, dedication, and that we talk about technical communication. I wouldn't even call them soft skills per se, but they're really hard things to do. And that's what makes them valuable. And anyway.
Yeah. I mean, like half of my day job is not even coding. It's basically, all right, in Teams, you got to write exactly this well-written in Microsoft Teams or in Microsoft Outlook, whether it's some type of communication message, you got to write very clearly, like you got to craft the message, you got to say, these are the things I've done. You got to be very clear. So questions, it's a skill which it sounds like, okay, it's writing. How difficult could it be? Will these people get by? But writing and speaking, these soft skills, the reason they're increasingly important is because, well, we're already seeing some levels of automation in software engineering. Now, does that mean I should not learn to code? No, and in fact, it means the opposite in my view, which is why I learned to code and I double down on it, which is learn to code, but ensure it, which is again coming back to why I love Codesmith, because of this, like the hard learning method of push through the discomfort is, okay, we're going to push through the discomfort, we're going to learn. But the same way, if someone wants to just, a lot of people have this expectation from my point of view anyway, where they think, okay, I just turn up to whatever boot camp, any boot camp, and then I have a job at the end of it, like happy days. But firstly, that's not how it works. If that's your mind frame, a boot camp is not for you, or any type of education. Because if you think you're going to do that, then you're definitely not going to be able to learn by yourself, which is an even complete different path. So yeah, when I was kind of looking for boot camps, when I'm buying even like a toothbrush, I research the hell out of it. Like I have this disease. So you best believe when I was going to like decide which boot camp, I really researched like where to go. So in the end, it was a no-brainer. It was Codesmith, and this is all like, no one's paid me to say this. I'm saying this out of my own. So yeah, like I settled on Codesmith, and then when I did Codesmith, I realized like, damn, I actually, like similar to your story, but even much, much worse. When you went to your boot camp, like back in the day, my boot camp experience was I actually sucked at coding. But as you say, you just like keep going. It's the notion.
Cyrus, I was not like, I would describe myself as that beyond belief. And that's not, people think we're being indulgent. Oh, you're a senior software engineer at Tesla. Like how, but damn, it's really damn hard. And it's so eye-opening to realize how damn hard it is. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. Look, I mean, of course, I wasn't good at coding, but as you say, you keep going, and it's the notion of compounding, which I have to throw another Charlie Munger quote in there, but he says, rule number one of compounding, never interrupt it. So a lot of people, like a lot of times I had heavy imposter syndrome, still do. And when I was coding, I was like, damn, I really don't know much, but you actually know a lot more than you do at any given point in time. And you just keep going. But the point is, the reason why these soft skills are crucial is because, well, the future, we've already seen something like the tool Devin, which is the first sort of autonomous software engineer. And I think there's estimates, it's like 12% as complete as of a human being software engineer so far. But it can do basic things like pass some technical interviews and take some Upwork jobs and complete them. But the people, so this is a very, I think, crucial point. What I'm getting at is the people who can just code, like I mentioned earlier, who've like been coding all their lives, they don't have soft skills. I think the majority of them are in danger in the future, because my view is that every company will have, every big corporate will have just a few, maybe 5 or 10 or 2, who knows, depending on the size, just a few of these quote unquote 100x engineers who have, again, been coding since they were kids, and but they're another level. They're not like your regular coding since kids. They're a complete different level. They get paid 10x of everyone else. And that's a different ball game. And I personally would never want to, I can never be one of those people. And I don't want to be one of those people. So you have those people who will be kept, maybe 5 of them will be kept in the corner. It's like, these are the people we don't speak with. Leave them alone for crisis management or preventing hackers or whatever. So that's like a small minority, like a few percentage points. And then you have the majority who can code, but they'll become obsolete in my view. And then the software engineer will become like a technical product manager, which is, you need to know how to code. You need to know some UX, UI design. You need to know how to do like even product management, like the psychology of a lot of product management is the non-technical aspect as well, understanding the psychology of users. So like UX, UI design, speaking in a lot of management meetings, a lot of people would want to rise up in the corporation they're in to get better salaries, better titles. So all of these things comes from pretty much soft skills and the aptitude to learn, and just like a more generalist mindset rather than I'm just going to learn to code and I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Because even a lot of the FANG people I've worked with, they've been in FANG for like 10 years, like Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. And then they come to somewhere like Tesla. And then after 10 years of coding, they just want to be like a staff product manager. But they're a technical staff product manager. So it's given them the optionality to now lean into something which is marrying the soft skills with the technical skills. And their future is so bright, more than anyone else in tech, I think, because these people can code, which you need to know, because the future is, look, AI is going to do some of the code for you or a lot of it, but it still will need a human being to make the overall architectural decisions or the trade-off decisions, or as you say, these elements which humans can only understand or need to do. Because as an example, if software is going to write a blog, already a lot of writers I know who have, like, some people I've had on my podcast have sold like a million plus books, like some of the best-selling authors. And even they're critical of, everyone's critical of, you can just firstly tell when an AI has written it. And secondly, it doesn't have that, this is not about this. I find it very kind of, Nassim Taleb talks about this himself, where you go to these tech conferences and these tech people have a very engineering mind. There's no like soul to it. They're not the type of people who are like going to read literary books or understand, like, why am I going to read fiction? I'm just going to read non-fiction books my whole life. Like that's not how the world works. And I think you can learn more from firstly fiction than non-fiction, but that's besides the point. My point is, these people have an engineering mind and they don't understand the human aspect of things, where we are social creatures. And AI, I think we're going to reject a lot more AI art and essays and books and music than people think, because it doesn't have the artist's souls or the creator's soul or the authenticity or originality that comes with such creations. So,
I mean, I think that's what's fascinating to me is that we shared about it earlier. I mean, I will say, especially when I'm thinking about one of the things when you structure a team, which you've done as well, but is this extraordinary value to people having complementary almost identities. And as you say, when you say someone has like an engineering mind and less of the, I don't know, let's say the kind of arts, when you actually structure a team, it's kind of beautiful to have those complementary pieces. That's my getting on record, the importance of that, and actually genuinely is. But also, just to come back to your point about the almost a 10-year people, by the way, and the compounding. My camera cut out for a while, so I heard everything. But come back to the compounding point from Charlie Munger, who, a couple of brilliant figures have died and passed away in the last year or so. Charlie Munger, obviously, my closest friend, has been a complete admirer and obsessed believer in his thoughts and his ideas over his lifetime. And I mean, those two together, when they are up on stage, are really special thinkers, Buffett and Munger. And Munger's almost kind of interesting for his acceptance of being that brilliant but not center stage figure. And I think that's one of the things I want to come back to as well, is what is, again, the good life, where you're talking about leverage, talking about, and it perhaps partly is finding that place of fun for you, and knowing that these things we're talking about here and the way you're describing them, Cyrus, are things that are your personal journey that we each have to find our version. Some it is to be the Buffett, some it is to be the Munger, and some it is to be the person in the audience learning and admiring and being excited about the Munger or whatever. So there's and sometimes be in some lanes we're the Munger and some we're the audience, and we're all and that's a great thing. The other person, just another sort of shout out, which we're doing our site redesign right now, and one of them is Lynn Conway, who you'll have seen was top of Hacker News as one of the most significant computer scientists of the last 100 years.
Yeah,
and also a pioneer in a domain of identity close to my own heart, and some for folk on the audience worth looking up as well. For those of you who haven't, we're doing some cute Lego minifigures. I saw someone mention in the chat. Lego, we're doing some cute Lego minifigures illustrated, actually probably on record, not Lego, because I don't know if you're allowed to. So minifigures that look somewhat like Lego, and we're going to have a wonderful one of Lynn Conway, which will be very nice. To talk about compounding, I mentioned in a post a few weeks ago that is it on? Am I coming through?
Yeah. I hear you.
A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned in a post, I was back at my college and there was a professor there, really remarkable professor who's now the bursar, head of finance at this college with $1 billion plus endowment, but was an early pioneering computational neuroscientist. That means they were trying to capture particularly use of human language in computers, so with programming. And that meant back then trying to model human language precisely with structures in a computer, data structures and or programming language, to capture how humans use language. And it kind of ran out of steam. They'd achieved pioneering things, and actually Jeff Hinton, his colleague, went on to win the Turing Prize, which is the prize for computer science, a couple of years ago. And but after 10 years, he was unable to anymore. I'm just going to try and move this so that it can be played with. He was unable to anymore find that next step within it, much like you describe your FANG engineer friends who after 8-10 years go, wow, I've really dug into this, but now I want to go. The thing is, that's a pausing of compounding, and that's really scary. And so what I'm very curious always about, when I talk to Codesmith grads, like, they've been a VP of finance and they want to go to Codesmith, how do they then focus on digging in the compounding growth? Because just to people in the audience, like, as we know, compounding growth looks like you work really, really hard and it gives you, let's say, doubling. But if you're starting with an arbitrary measure, or I don't know, impact, outcome, whatever in life, traction, people hearing your ideas, to invest. But then after 10 years, you unfortunately within the space may run out of steam. This person ran out of steam in the trajectory of computational neuroscience. What do? They went and almost started, in their view, from scratch in what they call wet neuroscience, which is literally putting the nodes, but putting it in the brain. That is terrifying. And I speak from personal feelings. it is terrifying to, after 10 years, go, what's that next piece? And when you describe somebody, but actually, and I was talking to a colleague at Codesmith yesterday about this, actually, that next step that people take is about, again, the emotional risk that it takes, but to find the intersection. That person, this professor, went from being computational neuroscience, wet neuroscience, then finance and corporate, and then Oxford professor come financial lead of $1 billion endowment. And so these things, the compounding also has to be looked at from the macro scale. So I'm, going down a rabbit hole here. I'm curious about how you are thinking about that. Maybe your plans ahead, you've made these investments in engineering. Some of these trajectories are 10 years, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is. What's your? Do you have a sense of I'm going to have to step down to step up kind of thing ahead of yourself? Obviously, where you can speak to it.
Sure. Actually, it's you mentioned.
Can we turn the volume back up? I can hear.
Yeah, sorry. Biff, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. You're fine. Is that I'm
okay. So I think the way I look at it is, you mentioned someone who's done 10 years in one career, and then let's say, for example, they want to learn to code. I actually do not see that as disrupting the compounding, because let's say they were a lawyer and then they learn to code. So then they go on to work for a legal tech firm, or as you say, they're doing these legal prompting, or they're kind of using their past experience to double down and actually go more niche within the current role and keep the compounding going. But in terms of how I'm thinking about it is, as I said, one of the main reasons was really just for optionality. And coding is not only leverage, but it's also optionality, which means, okay, I can now, if I want to, build a venture-backed startup and raise VC funding if I want. Or I can do indie hacking. And look, the rate of failure for startups is high. So it's an asymmetric bet. But if it fails, then, okay, I have a valuable skill. I can go and get another job somewhere else and work 9 to 5 as a software engineer until I find my feet again, and then kind of hack on the evenings or weekends or build other projects. So really the way I look at it is, and I had a tweet on this a few months ago, but like all the stuff I've done since childhood and in the last decade, like almost 20 different types of jobs, from like sales and banking to like obviously the podcasting stuff to advising some startups to like non-technical product management, design, it just goes on and on. And when you marry all these things, I think it just creates interesting. I'm trying to increase, like, it sounds like very kind of think boy. It's like these memes online, people who just read and regurgitate stuff, but it's honestly I actually read the Nassim Taleb's book of, and I have it here actually, his Inserto series and his book Black Swan. So I've taken a ton of notes. I have a lot more, but here's me showing off with my notes. I've done my homework, but I'm trying to increase my exposure to positive black swans and increase the surface area of course, luck is not in our control, but to some extent it is, because if you can open yourself or expose yourself to positive black swans, it's not guaranteed, but you're taking asymmetric bets. You're opening up yourself to more optionality. So if I combine, maybe nothing happens, but if I combine all the things I've done the last 10, 20 years, it's pretty much what VCs look for in founders. And already a few VCs have told me, like, you should swing at something, because at early stage VCs back the people, not the ideas, because they back your ability to pivot, because there's a high chance that the startup you build will not work and then you have to pivot. So they're betting more so on the person to figure it out rather than the idea itself. So that's a form of optionality. If that fails, you can get a software engineering job. You can work remotely. I plan to work from somewhere hot, hopefully, because of my genetics. Europe and England has not been treating me well in that regard. So yeah, I literally just look at it. I don't know is the answer. I try not to plan too much, because I think planning too much, you got to have a rough idea of the direction you're going. But I think being too adamant or attached to the outcome is a form of fragility. You have to kind of be adaptable. Who knows what could happen.
Well, one thing to add to that, Cyrus, and I'm hoping coming through because
got you.
I'm not coming through. Okay.
I hear you.
Oh, you're coming through. Okay. We'll wrap up in a second. We'll wrap up in a second because we're having some wonderful technical, on completely my fault. One thing I'll add to that, there's a great, one of my favorite YouTube channels, 3 blue, 1 brown. Maybe many of you know it. I think that's the exact name of it. I always lose track of the colors. But the YouTuber, the creator, explains truly difficult technical concepts. They gave a commencement speech at Harvey Mudd, maybe the most famous computer science school in the country in the US, or at least one of the top most famous. And they talked about, and I think I'm going to hold this phrase in my head: action precedes passion. Yes. I think it's really, really important what you're describing is, as you want things about one's next step and your next stage. Like, did I think I was going to run a coding school? Not. I did not. However, what's wild is when you describe, expose yourself to things, expose yourself to new ideas, expose yourself to new, challenging, maybe even spaces. And by the way, it ain't easy, people. Let's not pretend. Like, I had a breakdown 3 years ago, or 4 years ago. COVID part of it, perhaps, but also just there's a lot of stuff that when you put yourself in these challenging positions, your mind can't maybe always take it. However, so I don't really have an answer to go quite into that, but like at the very least, what I think one can feel confident of is exposing oneself to these new spaces, to models, to software tools, but also, as you say, to other maybe challenging things like a Toastmasters, like doing your podcast, like writing, like sharing ideas. These are good and challenging things. I speak to, for myself. Why the heck are we doing a bloody fireside chat? Because actually it puts one in a space where it's like, damn, this makes one think differently. And from those emerge new passions and new excitements. And I think that's a really, and what I would say is, God damn it, so many of the spaces in which new passions and excitements can emerge are in the software and technology space, including ML, AI. That's, mentioning Codesmith, that's why that's part of the curriculum now. And I say that as also someone who's not paid to pitch code. That's not true. That's very much true. Okay, people. So wonderful discussion. We're hitting the end of our time here. We've had some outstanding technology performance, but outstanding technology discussion and some technology challenges on my end, but some outstanding technology discussion. Cyrus, I can't thank you enough for this conversation. As I say, for the mentorship you've given to your cohort mates, your fellow grads, your alums, and for sharing the ideas you shared here today, not least your, I didn't interrupt so that we can snippet it out, your kind words about Codesmith. I was so tempted to say something to deprecate it, but I was like, no, we've got to hold that piece. But it has been a wonderful discussion, Cyrus. I think I need to unmute you if you want to share any closing words, because I don't think, because I've got 2 of me, I can't have the volume on, because otherwise it's just me coming through. But Cyrus, thank you so much. If you want to share any closing words.
No, it's my pleasure. And I'll just wrap it up with you. You just spoke at the end of a few lovely thoughts of your own. And I would say Codesmith for me was a positive black swan where I exposed myself to, all sorts of interesting outcomes. And to add to your final thought, I would say it's another trite quote, but in life, we must choose our regrets. And, thank you for being vulnerable and talking about, 4 years ago, you had a breakdown. For the last 4 years, I've not really had any social life. Like, I'm just behind this desk. If it's not learning to code, it's podcasting, it's writing online, it's messaging interesting people, trying to we have access to a tool which none of our ancestors had access to. And I think it gives you, access to people and knowledge that was never available before. So it's down to people if they want to leverage that or not. So it's the biggest blessing, because without the internet, I would have never met Will Sentance or been in Codesmith. So internet for the win.
I mean, I'm afraid I can't let you get away with that. What a blessing that would have been for you. There you go. I can't. There's no way that could have ended any other way. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Cyrus. Thank you, everybody in our chat. Let's just shout out our chat members. Thank you, Adam. Indeed, to get that Haribo endorsement. Thank you, Eleanor. Gina, that's very, very kind of you. Akiran, fab. James, lovely to have you back. And again, very kind words. Woo! That's awesome, James. That is flipping brilliant. James sharing their 1-year anniversary of their role. Fab. Exactly. Iman,
that's my
saying
co-founder.
this guy should have a podcast. I think Iman might very well know Cyrus has a wonderful podcast. I encourage you all to go and listen to it. Thank you so much, everybody. We will look forward to more of these and see you all soon. Thank you, Cyrus. We are over and out. Cheers, people. Bye.